Welcome to the Fantasy Fling DFS channel. Take a break from the season-long commitment and join us for all things daily fantasy sports. DraftKings, daily drafts, the newest and hottest DFS deals, and all the best ball and DFS content you can handle. All right, let's dive headfirst into this episode.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Fling DFS channel. It's week 15. We are talking the Saturday 3-game slate on DraftKings, on FanDuel. Jameson, welcome in. How you doing?
Doing good. Gearing up for the holiday season, of course, and then also getting busy in the NFL side. We're starting to get the Thursday games. We're getting the Saturday slates going the rest of the year. So we got a lot going on, a lot to get into, but always happy to be on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. I love these. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Forever. I love these 2-game slates, the 3-game slates, the 4-game slates. They're my favorite. There's a lot less you have to get right. And, you know, I love it because it's not like a showdown where you have to have the literally perfect lineup. You have to guess everything right, you know, in large field GPPs. So I love that. You don't have to get the perfect captain, you know. You just sometimes you just have to get that 1% owned guy that can, you know, break the slate. So
just a lot like the Thanksgiving slate, just without the holiday to them. So, like I said, and you know, we've got a very interesting 3-game slate on Saturday. We got a lot of the backup quarterbacks. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, which, you know, we'll get into here in a minute, but looking forward to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start with the game tiles and just, you know, kind of overall thoughts looking at this. In fact, kind of share my screen real quick here, but just some overall thoughts looking at this. You know, I really think there's going to be a lot of the same builds, so it's going to be difficult to get unique, and really just because a lot of the quarterbacks are the same price, right? So like you don't have pay up option and pay down option at quarterback. You really have a lot of guys in the same range, as we're going to look at the salaries here in a little bit. So I think it's going to be a challenge. So, you know, we're going to be looking for ways to get unique, try to find leverage. But, you know, really there's one game that stands above them all for me, and that's Denver going against Detroit. This has a pretty high total. So both teams over 20 points. We like to see that. We got Detroit with the 25.75 team total, implied team total. And that's really what you're looking for, is a favored home team that's, you know, got 25 points or more. So that's a game that really stands out to me. I honestly, though, I really like the Denver side. We've seen Detroit as of late. Their defense has not been very good. They haven't looked like the same team. You know, really kind of have a little bit of a slump going on right now. But that's a game that, you know, is the highest on the slate. And then we have the second highest one. We have Pittsburgh 20.5 going against Indy, the home team. Zach Moss burned me a couple weeks in a row, but I don't know. I might go right back to him. What do you think?
I was going to bring that up. You know, maybe third time's a charm. I've played him the last 2 weeks, both weeks, especially on FanDuel. He was like 90+% owned in cash games. So he didn't necessarily burn you, but you know, the workload's been there. I know he hasn't been able to convert, but he has one of those rare workhorse roles. And, you know, anytime you can get it at the price that he's at, that's something I'm going to attack. So,
yeah, I agree. And, you know, the last one we have Cincinnati at home, 21.5 implied team total. The game total is 40. And then, you know, the Vikings 18.5, they're starting Nick Mullins this week. So Browning has actually been really good the first couple games. You know, I have mixed feelings about this slate. Part of me is like, we got 2 games with backup quarterbacks, and we got 1 game with starting quarterbacks who have, you know, had their moments, of course, and it has the highest implied team total. Part of me is like, maybe you should just stack that game, and maybe that game will go off. But, you know, Browning is a guy I think that you can't ignore. And Nick Mullins getting the start, it's interesting. It's intriguing. I'll say that. He has looked good in moments, played for San Francisco. He's certainly got a lot of weapons. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think that Cincinnati Minnesota game is kind of the wild card. Nick
Hmm.
Mullins, came from San Francisco, and then Kevin O'Connell, he did a
Yeah.
lot with Josh Jobs before everything
Yeah.
kind of went off the rails there. I do want to point out with Cincinnati though, Jake Browning has been efficient fantasy wise. A
Mhm.
lot of it has come off a screen game that Cincinnati hasn't had until like the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out that Brian Flores and the Minnesota defense has just other people. So you have this, they blitz a lot, but they can also sit back in coverage. I think they're going to attack Jake Browning a lot, throw everything in the kitchen sink at him to kind of mix and match some stuff. So I think a lot of people are going to play the Cincinnati side. And I'm very intrigued at, especially on FanDuel, one of the cheaper defenses. I'm very intrigued to play the Minnesota defense against them and kind of get away from that. I know Joe Mixon will probably have a workload, and Chase Brown would be popular too at his price, just because what they've done the last couple of weeks. But I'm very interested in the Minnesota defense on this slate.
Yeah, you're right, and they're the cheapest. Wow. So on DraftKings, it's Minnesota at 2,800 and Denver at 2,700, and Denver has just been forcing turnovers left and right. So it's almost crazy that they're the cheapest defense.
Yeah, I was going to say on FanDuel, they're 3,800, and then Denver's the lowest at 3,500. I'll be playing Denver defense too. I'm going to mix and match a little bit, but ever since they gave up that 70 burger, I think, the defense coordinator, Vance Joseph, and the Broncos defense has really, put the clamps down on offenses. And we've seen the Lions, Jared Goff has kind of turned into Jared Goff of old, where he's had a lot of mistakes. The Lions the last couple weeks, especially on defense, has been absolutely abysmal. Aaron Glenn, the defense coordinator, has not been very good. And I know you brought it up earlier. I'm very interested on the Russ side of things. So I just think there's like some popular media belief. And then when you kind of dive into the numbers and the stats and stuff, there's definitely some cheap plays that I'm interested in and some ways to kind of get contrarian. And I think those two defenses, instead of paying up, would be some of that too.
Yeah, to your point, I saw this just a little bit before we started, the stat. And I've been saying this for a while. Like that's one of the things about fantasy football is you kind of have to, there's highs and lows of the seasons. There's peaks and valleys, and sometimes if it is a small sample size. So if you look at the first several weeks, it can largely skew it in one way or the other. But since week 6, Broncos defense ranks first and third down percentage, first in takeaways, second in points allowed per game, second in touchdowns allowed per game, sixth in passer rating against, and eighth in completion percentage against. This is by Tyler Gorse, by the way, on X or Twitter, whatever we call it. So it's just a pretty good stat. And, so yeah, you look at that and it's pretty surprising that they're the cheapest defense, all things considered.
Yeah,
So.
and I do want to bring just one thing up on defense, and we'll cover it again once we go over positions. But Cincinnati on FanDuel's the highest. I think Nick Mullins has honestly probably had more experience than Jake Browning, but the Bengals defense is priced up as, they're going up against this rookie when it's honestly kind of flip-flop. And Cincinnati's defense has not been good at all this year. They're missing the two safeties that they got rid of in Von Bell and Jesse Bates. They moved on this past offseason, and it just hasn't been the same. So, like I said, we'll get into more of this in a minute, but just something to point out there.
Yeah. I love that you said that about, screens like Brown, taking a screen to the house, like those things specifically in smaller sample sizes, kind of as I was just talking about, like it'll really skew the number, to make you think, oh, maybe this guy's like a franchise quarterback type thing. We see this time and time again where quarterbacks will come in, these young quarterbacks, they'll come in and they'll play really well for, a few games. And then there's a book on them, and, defensive coordinators will try to take away what they do best. And then they start to struggle. So I'm interested to see ownership numbers. We don't have it as of yet because it's too early, but I'm sure by tomorrow we will have those over at DFS Army. And I'm telling you, if Browning ends up being high owned, I'm just going to fade it.
Yeah,
it's a tougher matchup, and I agree.
He's been good for a backup quarterback, but a lot of it has come off screens. I mean, they had two of them that were 50-plus touchdowns, so it kind of skews it. He's thrown 300 yards and 2 touchdowns when a lot of it and 2 touchdowns have come from screens. So it just kind
Yeah.
of something to kind of put in perspective when you dive a little deeper.
Yeah, and Minnesota has a pretty neutral pass defense. So it's going to be a tougher matchup. There are definitely easier matchups on the slate to target, and we'll get into that as we go here. But Jameson, who are the quarterbacks that you really like on this slate? I mean, there's only 6 of them to choose from, obviously, on a 3-gamer, but who are the 2 that you're really trying to get the most of?
I think it's going to be popular, but Russell Wilson against the Detroit
Yeah.
defense that is just getting obliterated. They just got tore up by Justin Fields again this past week. And honestly, I got 2 more. I'm going to play a little bit of Gardner Minshew just because the pass rate over expectation is so high. I know he turns the ball over. But they got Michael Pittman. They got Josh Downs. They're starting to incorporate some of these tight ends. Tight ends are cheap on this slate. We'll break it down in a little bit. And then I will play a little bit of Nick Mullins. I'll play a little bit of the unknown.
Yeah.
That's something I'm excited about. Justin Jefferson seems like he's going to play. They've got TJ Hawkinson. They've got Addison. It seems like Alexander Madison will be out, I think. He didn't practice. He just coming off a high ankle sprain. So that'd be a lot of Ty Chandler. I'm sure he'll have some ownership, but I do want to play the unknown with Nick Mullins, and that's definitely where I'm going to go.
Boy, if we could get Ty Chandler, that would be amazing. I was not aware that Madison was going to be out. I knew he was questionable, but he missed practice on Wednesday, and they play on Saturday. So,
yeah, I mean, Ty Chandler he's 6,000 over on FanDuel. So
yeah,
he's Jalen Warren's priced underneath of him. Chase Brown is underneath of him, and that's the bottom 3 of those kind of starting running backs there.
Yeah. Well, I was running optimals over at DFS Army a few minutes ago because one of the things I like to do is just kind of run it and see what it spits out without tweaking it, right? Without putting any loves or adores on guys that I really like. And the guy who's giving me the most is Russell Wilson. And has given me some Jake Browning, of course, and then Goff and Minshew. But that said, it doesn't have any projections for Nick Mullins yet because it hasn't factored in that, he's getting the start as of just yet. So expect an update on this tomorrow. That for me, it's going to be Mullins and Wilson that I will have the most of. Cincinnati is a team to target in the air. They give up 22 yards above what an average defense would give up in the passing game. So Mullins, I think, might be the top play on the slate for me, specifically considering price. It's just too good of a spot. 5,000, I like it. With all the weapons he has, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson is expected to play in this one. So I think Mullins is going to be a guy that I'm getting to a lot. I think most of the field, they don't really know a whole lot about him. So I'm not expecting, the field to really be on him. And then the guy that has a really good matchup as well is Russell Wilson. And, Russell Wilson has been just fine this year. Keep in mind, this isn't a main slate. We're not comparing him to the likes of, like a Jalen Hurts or Dak Prescott or, Josh Allen as far as like upside. He's right there with Goff. They're both averaging about 18 points a game. It's a much better matchup for Wilson. Detroit is actually pretty tough on the ground. So, as far as the 6 teams on this slate, Denver has the worst as far as a projection standpoint, the worst rushing projection on this slate. So, given that and given Detroit being attacked through the air, their secondary has been pretty suspect. I think this sets up well for a Wilson week. Now, that said, I'm a Broncos fan. I will tell you right now, there's been these spots in the past. We just saw it a couple weeks ago against Houston where the Denver offense has failed because they're better off establishing the run and then taking their shots down the field. But I do think they will take those shots. And if they land, Wilson could have a 25 to 30 point game.
Yeah, and that can definitely be the difference, just with how small the sample size is. I want to bring up
Yeah.
one thing with Nick Mullins. They do have some offensive line injuries. I know the right tackle didn't practice today, and they've had some other stuff that we won't know confirmed until, probably Friday night, get more of an idea. So something just to keep an eye on there. But, the one thing I do want to say with Russ, his, you know, the targets is pretty concentrated. It's a lot of
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton. He's on a touchdown, tear right now. Jerry
Yeah.
Jeudy just has not gotten there this year. I
It's been
saw that.
terrible.
I saw that Greg Dulcich might be back.
Yes.
That would be an interesting flyer. Gives him another weapon, and then obviously Javonte Williams, who seems to be getting a lot of workload. It doesn't seem like he's got the burst like he did before the injury, but that's just part of it. But volume is king, and I wouldn't hate pairing Russ and Javonte together. I don't think that's like a total negative. Wouldn't say I wouldn't do it everywhere, but I wouldn't be against that if you put it in the optimizer that you don't want to play a quarterback and a running back in the same lineup.
Yeah, I actually like that a good amount, mainly because Russ dumps off a lot. So, he's kind of been coached up that, his first read, second read, and if it's not there, either dump off or go, throw it away or take off and run. And he's dumped off a lot this year to both Wilson and Perrine. So, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, like I said, we haven't spoke about it. I do think Jared Goff is viable. I know the Broncos are not an ideal matchup, but outside of Russ, that's the only other starter that's playing right now. So,
Yeah.
Jared Goff's got the weapons. Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta. I would be very interested to see his ownership. I mean, he's been very good this year. I don't ever play him. I always want to play the running backs, and I need to be playing Laporta, and I might try to make a stand to play some of them this week. But
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there that we don't totally ignore him because he is the other starter compared to, the rest of the six guys.
I fully agree with that. And the lineups that I will have of Jared Goff will all have Laporta in them because the Broncos struggle to cover the tight end. And part of it is because they're so good at corner with Patrick Surtain, kind of locking down the number one guy typically. And then also McMillian has been coming in and playing really well. He's been one of these rare undrafted finds. It's just been incredible. I think he was, I think it might have been a defense player of the week this week. And so Denver's kind of been a pass funnel to the tight end position. And we know how talented Laporta is. He could break a slate. I will have a lot of him. And I think if he smashes, then there's the ability for Goff to potentially smash. So on a 3-gamer, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So I think that unless you have anything else, I think that really covers quarterback. Like I said, I'm going to play a little bit of Minshew, but I have no interest in Trubisky. And I'm going to be honest, I probably personally won't be playing a lot of Jake Browning.
No, I think, ownership's specific. If he's going to be high owned, I'm totally down to fade that. I'm down to fade the recency bias. I'm just at some point or another, like the shoe that when's the other shoe going to fall? It has to for some of these young guys, like the DeVitos, the Brownings. I've been watching the football a long time. I have a hard time believing we're just going to get all these backups that are just going to come in and be starters. Eventually they're going to have a bad game. So,
and especially against Brian Flores. I mean, he just put on a masterclass against Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders this past week. So I think this is kind of where he gets a little bit stirred up, and I think a lot of ownership will go on him, and I'm just willing to fade that.
Totally agree. Well, let's move it on to running backs. Jameson, who do you like on this slate?
I like Zach Moss a lot. I'm going to go back to him again. I'm going to hope that people have been burned the last 2 weeks and just don't want to play him. Just because, we get people who fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me type of thing. I want to play a lot of both of the Detroit guys. I know it's not the ideal matchup against Denver, but they get a lot of volume. And either one, I know people talk about Montgomery if they're leading and Gibbs if they're
Yeah.
behind. I really don't care about that. I think both of them end up getting on the field. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs probably got a better ceiling, but both of them get a touchdown. If they Lions get in the red zone, it automatically goes to David Montgomery just about. So if the touchdowns the difference between these running backs, that's where I want to go. And then Ty Chandler, hope for some dump offs from Nick Mullins, and then I'll mix and match a little of the other guys. I'm going to be underweight on the Bengals running backs. I'm a little worried about getting burned by Joe Mixon, but I've been fading him for the last 2 years, and for the most part, it's worked. And then a little bit of Javonte Williams.
I couldn't agree more. The Broncos are actually, now there's some of this factors in the Miami debacle and really the beginning of the season. But as far as defenses on the slate, they can still be even this past, 7-game run where they've gone 6-1. James Cook still had a good game against them. For Buffalo, Eckler had a 20-point performance last week. They're still, like most teams have played Denver and had double-digit performances. 10 points, 11 points, 15 points, and on this slate, that's going to be enough for sure. So I'm with you. I will be playing a lot of Gibbs and Monty, both. I'll be over there. They'll probably be between. I'm not going to have a whole lot of Amon-Ra, but I'm going to have a lot of Gibbs, Montgomery, and Laporta. So I like those guys. I'm with you on Moss. He's got another good matchup, and he got 82% of the carries last week. He's getting all the opportunities. So
yeah, he's a really tough fade. Even just when you get a guy who's got a workload like this on FanDuel, he's 6,600. It is just a really tough fade. Even if it doesn't work out, like playing him the last 2 weeks, I think has been the right play at his price. Even if I've gotten burned just because of the workload, that's exactly what you kind of want to chase in DFS.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And so those two backfields, obviously. And then Cincinnati, that's, pretty good matchups target as well. So with the Madison ankle, if he plays, I'm going to fade him, full fade. I will have some Chandler. If Madison doesn't play, I might even be 100% Chandler. We'll see. But yeah, Mixon has a pretty tough matchup against Minnesota, and he had a little bit of an injury last week. So I don't like the matchup for him. And I think I'll have a little bit of a Javonte, but just because Denver is going to establish the run.
Yeah,
that's just what they're going to try to do. And you've been seeing more and more Javonte. The burst hasn't been there, like you said, but he is very good after contacts. Like he just drags people and fights for extra yards. So and getting those dump offs, that's really kind of a cheat code on DraftKings. Less so on FanDuel, where I know you play a lot.
Right. So just all about full point PPR. So that's the main difference. FanDuel obviously more touchdown dependent and half point. DraftKings is full point PPR, and it makes all the difference.
100%. Well, let's move it along to wide receivers. Obviously, we have Justin Jefferson, who is expected to play. I'm hoping people will start to fade him. The injury-prone narrative will creep into their head. That little devil on their shoulder. I'm hoping that's the case, Jameson. What do you think?
I played him this past week, and I'm right there with you. When we get these guys, I brought it up a couple weeks ago with Kyron Williams. He came back the first week, and then everybody wanted to see how he did before they played him. That's not how you play in DFS. You want to, strike before everybody else, and then when all the sheep follow, that's when you, kind of ditch the thing. So, I will be playing Justin Jefferson. I'm worried that his ceiling won't be there with Nick Mullins at quarterback, but him. We've got, the heavy hitters, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Jamar Chase. I think if you're going to pick those three, I'm going to add Michael Pittman there too because his efficiency's been very well. Between those guys, I think the safest play is probably Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's, got Jared Goff at quarterback, but I will be mixing and matching those. I will be playing a little bit of Justin Jefferson. I probably will not be overweight on him. I do want to point out for wide receivers, I like Michael Pittman. I think you could play Josh Downs or one of the tight ends, and you don't have to have Gardner Minshew to get there. I do want to point that out there.
Yeah. I like that. Jefferson, he's a guy. If he plays, I'm playing him. Plain and simple. Specifically because, like I said, I think I'm going to have a good amount of Nick Mullins, just based on the matchup and just the unknown. And he has so many targets and weapons that he can just get there by basically what we saw Browning do 2 weeks ago. Right? He throws a pass to Chase, and Chase just beasts on the defenders and takes us to the house. Jefferson can do that. Addison can do that. He hit Addison in stride, streaking down the sideline. Hawkinson, there's just so many ways for him to get there. And obviously, I think he's going to favor the big targets, the Justin Jeffersons, the TJ Hawkinsons. So I like Jefferson. I'm going to go right back to Chase. I'm not going to have a ton of Amon-Ra. Like I said, I just don't like the matchup. But I will have some Chase, a good amount of Chase. So the thing is it's hard not to pay at wide receiver this week, right?
Yep. Because
on this slate, we don't have any expensive quarterbacks, so it's going to be easy to get Jefferson, to get Amon-Ra. We don't have a Barkley, we don't have a Christian McCaffrey. So, how can you not pay up for these wide receivers?
It's pretty thin. Like the mid-tier guys. Deontay Johnson didn't practice today, and I just don't want to play the Steelers wide receivers anyways. You've got Jordan Addison, who, is intriguing. T. Higgins is okay. I mean, these are like mid 6K guys on FanDuel. And then it dumps off to like the Jerry Judys, the Josh Reynolds, the Tyler Boyds. So it's you pay up or you're kind of paying all the way down, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Pittman is probably, I think, the guy that is not really priced high. I mean, 7,300, considering his target share, he's getting 30% target share on the season, like almost 40% last week. So, I love Pittman. I certainly will have a lot of him. Sutton, will the touchdowns continue? I mean, there's a reason why he's Wilson's number one target, because you saw it with Judy, right? Judy was the game plan last week. And finally, Wilson was like, screw it. Sutton's down there somewhere, and just, heaved a 50-yard bomb to Sutton. And he did what he's done all year. And, the one-handed grab. So, I think a good amount of Sutton. I will say, as far as, like a leverage play that I'd be looking for, I could see Mims getting a little more involved this week. They've tried to force the ball to Judy. Why not get the rookie involved a little bit more? And he's getting more involved as is. Plus, he is a good punt returner, kickoff returner. So there is also that upside where you could double dip potentially on if, he takes one to the house.
I like that call. And I'm going to go on the other side. I was going to say a dart throw for me would be Jameson Williams. They said they're going to try to get him more incorporated. We've seen the speed. They've put him on some end arounds and stuff. I do want to point out, talk about Michael Pittman going back there real quick. Since week 6, he's had at least over 10 points in each game that he's played. So he's almost on a slate like this, kind of a lock button for me personally. And then Josh Downs, he's kind of cooled off a little bit, but I'm still intrigued to play him. And then, I mean, the rest of these punts are pretty damn ugly. I mean, you're talking Trent Irwin, Allen Robinson, Brandon Powell, Khalif Raymond, Alec Pierce, KJ Osborne. I'm not getting there personally, and if they beat me, then that's just how it's going to go. I think.
Yeah, it depends.
I think my 3 wide receivers, I think Cortland Sutton and Michael Pittman will probably almost be locks, and then I'll mix and match the top guy to go with them.
Absolutely. And, and it's it depends on how much volume you're playing. Like for me, if I'm going to be playing 150, like I'm going to get exposure to all these guys, Downs, Boyd, Reynolds, Judy, Osborne, but it's going to be, like 5 to 10%, right? I'm just going to try to be even with the field on these guys. Like I said, Mims would probably be the guy that I would go over a bit on. But yeah, I like the Jameson call too, because, I think Denver's going to focus on Amon-Ra. Maybe even try to slow down Laporta. And Jameson is the guy that could be unaccounted for in the secondary and, could catch a deep bomb. So I like that call.
Yeah. Yeah, especially against Patrick Surtain. That's just not an ideal matchup, and I don't think Jameson Williams is going to see a whole lot of them. And, the Lions need a spark, and if that's what it takes on offense to kind of get that going, I want to be on the positive end of that. So I think we didn't talk about the Steelers wide receivers. I don't love it. If you're playing a lot of lineups, I'd maybe throw a little bit of George Pickens if Deontay Johnson is out. But other than that, I'm not going to get there personally. I'm pretty much fading Steelers offense.
Yeah, definitely. The guys that I really like is we're going to tight end here. I will be playing a lot of double tight end, and Freiermuth will be in the mix for me. But who do you like at tight end?
I was going to point out, I think double tight end will be viable on FanDuel this week. It's normally not, but when you got two guys like TJ Hawkinson and Sam Laporta, I think you can put them together and they would equal out. Their kind of prices like mid wide receivers. So Hawkinson, Laporta, Tanner Hudson has been getting a little bit of work. He's starting to kind of break away from Irv Smith as the receiving tight end in Cincinnati. And then I want to like one of these Colts wide receivers. I have no idea which one to pick. It ends up
Mo
every
Alley
single
or
week.
Granson?
And they got Will Mallory involved too. So
Yeah.
it's I think I would lean Granson, but it's it's Russian roulette. I brought up earlier Greg Dulcich. If he plays, I'm gonna have a little bit of him. And then
I love him if he plays. The Broncos have very much missed him in the middle of the field.
I would play him over Troutman, personally.
Yeah. The only problem with Dulcich is if you play him, he's likely to re-aggravate his hamstring on the first series of the first play, so there's that issue, but Russell and him had a connection going back to last year, even last year with being such a disaster. And he's an athletic tight end and they missed it. And he's only 2,800. So a lot of upside for a really cheap price.
Absolutely. So,
yeah. And I don't think a lot of the field will play him, honestly, just because of you haven't seen him all year, right?
Right.
And they probably did play him and got burned.
And just don't want to go back to it. I'm looking at the Colts stuff. Mo Alley-Cox last week, 1 reception for 2 yards, and it was a touchdown. The week before, it was 1 catch for 30 yards, and then a whole lot of zeros. I probably won't play him. Kylan Granson is the one that gets a little bit of work. He gets 2 or 3 targets a game. One guy we didn't talk about is Pat Freiermuth. I'd be interested in him a little bit, but I'm very interested in the top 2 tight ends, and I want to pay up for him. I think that's kind of the difference maker. And like I said, I think you play double tight end on FanDuel this week.
Yeah, and I'll be playing a lot of double tight end on DraftKings. Like I said, Laporta, Denver, out of all these teams, struggles to cover the tight end the most. Like I said, they're kind of a pass funnel to the tight end position. And Laporta, arguably the best rookie in this really strong rookie class. So I love him. We've seen 30-point games from him this year. And honestly, spoiler alert, like my favorite stack, it might be Goff to Laporta this week. But Laporta is a guy I'll be over the field on. I also like TJ Hawkinson. Like I said, Mullins, not a lot of experience, a little bit, not a lot of experience. These, less experienced quarterbacks I tend to target. big tight ends like TJ Hawkinson. And then Freiermuth, same thing. We've seen the upside with him. We talked about it, I think, last week on the Showdown. It didn't happen last week, but it does happen every now and then. Yeah.
It could.
Yeah. Tanner Hudson, I will have some of him. He caught a touchdown last week. Jake Browning clearly likes to target him, so he's a guy I'll have. And then last but not least, kind of as we just talked about, for me, it's going to be Dulcich if he plays. So I will have a good amount of Dulcich at his $2,800 price.
Yeah, I mean, he's 4,500, so he's, most of the FanDuel guys are like $5K to 5,500, so he's cheaper. Like I said, Detroit defense has been pretty bad, and just kind of something you can hit at low ownership, and that could be the difference. And I think that's honestly about it for tight end. But beyond there, I'm not going to get any of these pretty ugly plays.
Yeah, I think that's it. Let's just kind of go over defense and then your favorite stack, favorite contrarian stack, and then we'll wrap this up. So
on defense, for me, I'm going to play like I normally do. I'm going to play the cheap ones. So I'm going to play Vikings defense will be my favorite, going up against Jake Browning, and then Denver defense against Jared Goff and Detroit. The way that Denver defense is playing and what Detroit offenses has just not been good the last couple weeks. The only other one I would be interested in paying up to get contrarian would be Colts defense against Mitch Trubisky. Steelers just aren't moving the ball. I honestly do not want to play Cincinnati defense. I'm not afraid of them burning me. I should say that. I think a lot of people want to play him against Nick Mullins, but I'm not scared of Cincinnati's defense, and if that's what beats me, then so be it. Detroit defense has been pretty bad. Even if the Broncos don't do great on offense, I just don't trust Detroit over the last month. And Steelers defense, I think, is a little bit viable. Gardner Minshew has had some turnovers and stuff like that. But like I said, Vikings probably going to be my favorite defense. And then as far as the stacks go, we talked about Russell Wilson. I'll play a lot of him. I'm going to play Nick Mullins, and then I'll probably play some Gardner Minshew stuff. Put him with Pittman, and then Zach Moss. And like I said, Nick Mullins, he's cheap, and then you can play him with Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson, kind of build around that.
Definitely. I like that. Everything you said. I like the Colts going against Trubisky. I actually, I'll have a little bit of Cincinnati going against Mullins as well, but not a lot, just a little bit. And then my two favorite defenses are the Vikings at 2,800, just a cheap defense going against an inexperienced quarterback who's had a couple good games. He's due for a letdown. And then Denver at 2,700, like I said, we talked about, they're first in takeaways. So they've been creating turnovers. They've had a lot of games over, 10 points, 12 points. So I like them in this spot. As far as stack, though, I kind of gave you the Goff Laporta stack. I like that one. But my contrarian stack of the week would be Russell Wilson to Marvin Mims. I like that one. I think it could be a Mims week. And with a Laporta run back. So
there you go. I don't think anybody's going to play Mims. I will say this. One way to get more contrarian than most, and if you think about it, it's really not that crazy. I think a lot of people are going to be playing Jake Browning with the running backs.
Mm-hmm.
It is very cheap to play Jake Browning, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. You normally can't ever do that in DFS because you got to pay up for Burrow, and then but T. Higgins is like a mid-price wide receiver because of how bad it's been.
Yeah,
you got to pay up for Jamar Chase, but I don't think that's going to get played probably near enough as it probably should, especially in large field stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, you could also play like a Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, and Laporta double stack, and with all the value that you'll have on the slate, and that's not something you're normally going to play on a main slate. So
no, and I was going to just like you brought up with the Jared Goff stuff. If you're worried about Patrick Surtain and Amon-Ra, you can put Jared Goff with Laporta, which you brought about. Both of us like him a lot. And you can kind of mix and match the running backs too. I think that's viable.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you for joining us. Hope you all make some money on this 3-game slate. I know I'm excited for it. I'm going to be in Vegas watching it go down in the sports book, hopefully celebrating losing my mind and not tilting. So
there you go. Winning some more money so you can gamble that night.
There you go.
Go party with it.
Even better. And you can put it back in on the main slate on Sunday. So
there we go.
That's going to wrap it up. Wish everyone the best of luck. Jameson, as always, thank you for joining me. We will catch you next week.
You guys have a good one. Good luck out there.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. You know you don't want to miss what's coming next. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next episode right here on the Fantasy Fling DFS channel.